Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buckner, the Buck, owner, operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and its sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Today I had a great chance to talk to Richmond Webb. Richmond Webb is a former left tackle for the Miami Dolphins and briefly for the Cincinnati Bengals, but it was with the Dolphins that he had his greatest success. 7 times he was chosen for the Pro Bowl. Actually, it was the first 7 years of his career. 2 times he was a first-team All-Pro. And to date, he is considered by virtually every Dolphin fan as the greatest offensive tackle in that team's history. I had a chance to talk to Richmond Webb about the fact that he's not yet in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he's actually never been a semifinalist yet. He really should be, at least reach that point. When you've accomplished as much as he has, he should at least get a look from the Hall, and he hasn't really had his name go up into a serious committee where they could really debate his merits. Hopefully that's going to happen soon. He's actually in the top 100 of our current NotInHallOfFame.com football list of those to consider for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But we didn't just talk about that. We talked about his time at Texas A&M, his time in Cincinnati as a Bengal, and just the Hall of Fame process in general. And without further ado, I present to you Richmond Webb, a legend in football. Hope you enjoy it. Richmond, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. No complaints. I have the privilege of living in the sunny Caribbean. So I'm calling you from Barbados.
Whoa. I'm jealous now. We was on good terms till you told me that. I'm jealous now. So I need to be over there with you.
Well, I happen to know a few people here. I can probably make that happen.
Okay. Well, I believe in networking and connection, so that's always a good thing to know. You know, you got access to it, so I definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you before I sort of go into your pro career, I'm always sort of fascinated when I'm talking to a former football player or basketball player about sort of the recruiting process in college. Now, you're from Texas, correct?
That's correct. Grew up in Dallas, Texas. Played high school football there. Played college ball at Texas A&M, but yeah, you are correct. Grew up in Texas.
So, if you were recruited by Texas A&M, which is a top flight institution, clearly there were other colleges that were coming after you.
Oh, no question. I got mail from probably majority all over the country from I think it was the Pac-10, the Big Ten, really heavy in the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference, and I think even a few schools from the Southeast Conference. But I think I probably focused more on the Southwest Conference and the Big 8. At that time, I didn't want to go too. Some people like to, go 2,000 or 3,000 miles away from home, and I didn't want to go that far. I still wanted to be to where if my parents wanted to come see me play, I could be, within a few hours drive or something like that. So I really, took time and really considered the schools that were in proximity, maybe a little bit further than that, but at least where I know that they could, have an opportunity to come see me play. So I focused more on the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference.
Was it down between two schools? Like, what would have been the other one that almost made the cut?
I'd probably say toward the end. I visited, I think, just about every school. I know I took visits to Texas A&M, Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma State, and SMU. I think those were schools I visited. Some were official, some was unofficial. But I think it came down between A&M, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State. And the other thing I kind of considered was I no matter where I played, I was pretty sure I wanted to move back to Texas to live. And then kind of thought about the networking and stuff like that. But it was tough. But I chose Texas A&M, and I think it was the right decision for me. But the Aggie network is huge, and I just felt kind of at home, when I went down there. So Um, Me and another guy from my high school that, we had been knowing each other since third grade. Went to junior high, high school, played college football together, and then he eventually went on to play for the Raiders, and I went to Miami. But we both signed a letter of intent to go to Texas A&M, so that was the right decision for me.
And proof roll almost immediately because he was it as a rookie or a sophomore he played in the Cotton Bowl.
I was a redshirt sophomore, so it was really my third year. My first year I got there, I was redshirted, needed to put on weight. I was probably about 235, 240. Defensive lineman, and so I think I got up to 270 probably by the end of the spring or the end of spring semester. And then I was a backup my redshirt, well, I guess however you want to say, my second year, I was backup D lineman. And in the spring, they made a decision to move me to offensive line. Wasn't real happy about it at first, but it was the best decision. I think everything worked out for the best. So, wasn't happy at first, but I just said I wanted to play, and I had played both positions in high school, so I just tried to make the most of it, and everything kind of fell into place and worked out, and then everything started to take off from there.
Do you and you moved back to Texas after your playing career was done? Do you still have a close association with A&M?
I do. Matter of fact, I think in April, the spring game, so I will be going to the spring game. They have a lot of the alumni guys that played football for A&M over the years. So even guys from my eras and eras after that and before that, it's just a good time to go back and fellowship and all that. So I'll definitely go down that weekend, and we always have a great time. So I will be back in Aggie Land in April.
So once an Aggie, always an Aggie.
That's it. I couldn't say it better.
So you're drafted to the Dolphins. I believe it was 9th overall. And I listened to a few other interviews that you've done in preparation for this. And so a few things sort of stuck out at me. Just it wasn't all that long ago, 1990, but in terms of technology and just the way everything just sort of occurred. You were talking about how you just got the phone call. So were you watching that live on television, or was that even broadcast live in 1990? I don't remember.
It was. You know what? It was broadcast live. It's totally different what it is today. The draft was, I want to say, always on Sunday, the first round. And a few guys, what I remember, a few guys would get invited to New York. And then a lot of guys would either be at, where they went to school or at home with their families, this and that. And that's what I chose. So I was in Dallas. I was at my parents' house, and a couple of local television stations were there, and right outside my mom's house. And basically, what happened, I got probably 4 or 5 calls from different teams. I think one was the Raiders, one was New Orleans, and they were basically saying, "We don't think you'll be there, but if you're there, we're gonna take you, but we think you'll be off the board by the end." And so you're sitting in front of TV with your family, and you're watching ESPN, and of course, Mel Kiper was still doing it back then. Mel's been there for years, but he was there, Swami,
Yes.
Tom Jackson, and I can't remember who. It was normally like a panel of 4 people, maybe Joe Theismann. I think Joe Theismann was the other guy, and so first pick was Jeff George. He's quarterback out of Illinois. He went to the Colts. Second pick was Blair Thomas, Penn State. He went to the Jets. Third pick was a good friend of mine out of University of Miami, Cortez Kennedy. He went to Seattle. And the fourth pick was Keith McCants out of Alabama. He went to Tampa. Fifth pick was Junior Sal. He went to Chargers. Sixth was so after the 5th pick, it was Mark Carrier, and then everybody pretty slotted. Andre Ware played against him in college. He went to the University of Houston. He was a Heisman trophy winner. He went to Detroit because they ran the run and shoot, and then New England had the eighth pick. They took Chris Singleton, and while they were taking him, even though it was on TV, my phone started ringing, and I picked the phone up. They turned the cameras on, started recording, and it was Coach Shula on the phone, and he said, "This is Coach Shula. Are you ready to be a Dolphin?" I was like, "Yes, sir." And I didn't have to wait that long, but it seemed like it was an extremely long time because you listen to the commentators on TV, and I think from around the fifth pick, they were saying, well, this team could use a tackle. They might take him. And then they took Junior Sal. And then, Chicago could use a tackle, this and that. And then they took Mark Carey. And then same thing, not with Detroit, but with New England, they could use in Richmond Webb, and it did happen. And once it happens, they pull up your profile, and I think they showed a couple of clips from the Senior Bowl and all that, and that was it. So it was like a big weight off my shoulders once I was drafted, because it takes away the anxiety of the anticipation of, will it be this team, and the main thing that I wanted was to go somewhere warm, and couldn't have picked a better place than South Florida, so that was perfect for me.
So, not a big fan of the cold then, obviously.
Man, that cold, that separates the men from the boy. I mean, if I would have went there, I think you adjust, because one thing I know, you have to be prepared. It's a different type of way you have to dress and stuff like that, and I think your body adjusts. But if I had my choice, I chose the heat over the cold. So I was happy.
Yep.
Playing in cold weather games, but I knew once we played the game, we would be getting up out of there. I didn't have to live in it, so that was the main thing. But yeah, I'll take that warm weather any day.
Well, I'm still from Canada, so like I spent actually I've only been in the Caribbean for a year, so I was in Canada for many years. I've actually seen you play a couple times in Buffalo, so
okay.
Certainly.
Are you close to Niagara Falls or Toronto?
Yeah, I grew up in a town called Burlington, and then after I got married, I was in Toronto for many years before I moved out to the Canadian Rockies. So,
excuse me. Okay.
But just for the record, I didn't grow up a Bills fan, so I wasn't there booing you. I was mostly there trying to avoid being one of the many people who were not in a fight going to a Bills game.
Oh yeah, and that was a serious rivalry. The Miami Dolphins and the Bills, and then I started doing a little history. I was like, why do they not like each other? I mean, I understand rivalries that, and then I stumbled across some. I think maybe from 70 to 80, the Dolphins beat them like 20 times in a row. It was something like ridiculous. So it was something that I said, if that's not enough to make you want to hate somebody, that's definitely, So I was like, okay, I get it now. But great rivalries, they had some great teams with Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, James Lofton, Steve Tasker, and then, Bruce Smith, Cornelius Bennett, Bryce Pop. They had some really, really good teams, and that was the reason we couldn't get to the Super Bowl, because they were always just a little bit better, or they was always able to get it done to get to the next level. But I have a lot of respect for those guys, and I did enjoy competing against them.
Well, and you're protecting Dan Marino, obviously a legendary quarterback. One thing that I sort of wanted to ask you, as a left tackle, and there wasn't that many mobile quarterbacks then. I believe the most mobile quarterback of that era was Randall Cunningham. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all the quarterbacks that you had, even in college, were your traditional pocket passers. What would be the mindset then if all of a sudden you would be protecting a mobile quarterback like Cunningham?
I guess it's pluses and minuses and different, but playing in college, we were more of a running team, option quarterback team. So a lot of time, the quarterback ran the ball kind of like an extra running back. We threw the ball, but not much. So I had to adjust from going from being a heavily dominant run offensive oriented team to more drop back passing, throwing the ball a lot more. And I think that's what they had in mind when they drafted me and Keith Sims. It wasn't that we didn't know how to block and run the football, but our job was to protect, Dan Marino. And that's what we were brought to Miami for, and that's what we did. And, a lot of times people say, well, we should have been able to run the ball more. We could have, but that wasn't what our offense was designed. We were designed, when you got a prolific passer like Marino, and he's been doing it, he was there 8 years before we got there. So that pattern was already established. We were just there to protect the investment, which was him, and won a lot of games and stuff with him. So I think it just depends on the offensive scheme. It does help at times. I even watch a game now with a guy that's mobile. He can sometimes escape, but sometimes you might have a guy block, and then he's trying to escape and run right into the guy you blocking, and you're like, oh no. So as long as you're out there competing and you're trying to win, to me it doesn't matter. It's just you just do your job to the best of your ability and try to give your team the opportunity to win a football game.
So you're always a fix at left tackle. Was there ever any plan when you moved to Miami for you to be a different position, or that's where they wanted you right from the start?
That's where they wanted me right from the start. When I started playing at A&M, I was backup left tackle, and then the guy at guard got hurt, so they moved me from backup left tackle to guard. So I played offensive guard half of my sophomore year and my junior year. So right before the start of my senior year, they decided to move me out to tackle, which I wasn't real happy about that because I hadn't played it. Really didn't play it in the spring. It was like a week or two right before the season started, we're moving you to left tackle. And I was like, I didn't really have time to prepare, and just because it's a different, guard, you normally a little bit more firmer set, and I was comfortable there. So moved to tackle, played, and actually did pretty well out there. And then the funny thing was when I went to the Senior Bowl, Buddy Ryan was my coach. And as soon as I got there, I was lobbying to Coach Ryan. I was like, hey, you need to really let me play guard, because I always said, okay, I know I can play guard. I played it just to help the team, but I was trying to get back in my mind, my comfort zone. He said, I hear everything you're saying, but he said, no, everybody wants to see you tackle, so you're going to be playing left tackle. So I stayed out there and then did well at the Senior Bowl, and I played that position, the rest of my career. So it's just kind of funny, but it's funny how things happen. But I did try to lobby to get back to my old position, but it didn't work.
And I'm not sure if you're the only one. I think you are. I think you're the only Miami Dolphin to be a Pro Bowl in their first 7 years.
I think you're right on that. I think you're right. I think that is correct.
So as a team player, and there's not always a lot of spotlight on offensive linemen. I mean, like those who are really following the game close certainly do. Like a casual fan, don't necessarily understand the value of the O-line. But when you reach that individual accolade, and I know you don't really think about that as much at the position that you're playing, but when you first get as a Pro Bowl as a rookie, can you walk me through the mindset on that honor?
I was playing, and like I said, me and Keith played really well considering we were rookies. And I think when we started so early, it was unheard of to put 2 rookies on your blind side of your quarterback and just turn them loose. That's what happened, and we played, and then I think we ended up going 12-4 that season, and we were the wild card. The Bills won the division. I think they was 13-3. We was 1 game behind them. But I really wasn't thinking about anything like that. And then I think Marino, I want to say Mark Clayton, Jeff Krause, and then the thing about it, when they announced the awards, Coach Shula waited to save mine for last. So it caught me by surprise, but it kind of blew me away because, I wasn't expecting it. And I think the thing that really made me appreciate it was my teammates were happy for me as well because, um, at that time, you're a rookie. You're just trying to fit in. You're trying to fall in line, see where you fit and this and that. But I really had some good teammates, and they were truly, truly happy for me. So it was a great honor, caught me by surprise, and I even think the coaches were happy for me. So it was really good. I think I can't really express how I felt. I was kind of surprised, but I was truly happy. Like, wow, I really did that because that's not an expectation most of the time. Your rookie year that okay, I'm gonna just go and make the Pro Bowl, especially as an offensive lineman.
And I'm assuming that Dan Marino gave you more than an isotoner gloves.
Dan gave some gifts throughout the every year. He would always, give everybody something. He'd get offensive line something. So I know we got the gloves. I can't remember what else we got, but I got cowboy boots one year. He would give us different gifts and stuff like that. So yeah, he was good about that.
This is a really random question, but just the comedy film lover in myself has to ask that. Were you ever asked, or were any of the other Dolphins other than Marino and Shula asked to be part of Ace Ventura?
You know what? I was. There was a couple of us in there. I think I was there. I don't think I actually made an actual clip, but I was there for some.
Oh, you were.
Filming, so I think.
Okay.
I don't remember being in the movie, but I remember Jeff Ulanate. He was the center, and he was in the movie. But I think they took some clips that they maybe edited out that didn't make the movie. That maybe where we were out on the field doing something. I think we were in that. But I never made the actual movie, but yeah, I do remember that time because it was early on, my second year in Miami. Seemed like when we made that movie.
Did you get to go to the premiere?
I did not go to the premiere. No, I didn't. Mm-mm.
It's one of those things I just had to ask because it just sort of fell into that time frame. One of the other accolades that you got was being a first team All-Pro, and you did that twice. Same feeling as becoming a Pro Bowler, or like what's? Because I've always felt that being a first team All-Pro means a lot more than being a Pro Bowler. Would that be an accurate assessment?
That would be an accurate assessment, and I think what it was what am I trying to say? It is an accurate assessment, and I guess I really didn't pay attention to it first couple of years, but being all NFL or All Pro it combines both conferences, the American and the National Conference. So if you can make first team, that even carries more weight than just making the Pro Bowl. It's only 2 tackles. It's like either you 2 tackles for the first team, 2 second. Where Pro Bowls you got 2 starters on the American, 2, so it's 4. So it really is okay. Let's really tighten this thing down. So. That's definitely an accomplishment. That is extremely tough because it's a lot of good. At that time, it's a lot of great offensive linemen. So even to make that was huge.
And you played 2 years in Cincinnati. Any memories that really sort of pop out, other than the fact it was colder?
It was colder. I enjoyed playing in Cincinnati, believe it or not, and what I could appreciate. And I think that's just in that division, that Central Division back then. But it was, I guess, the AFC North now is Central. But it was, you had like Pittsburgh, Cleveland. I think back then it was Houston Oilers and Cincinnati. And the thing I could appreciate about it was I got there was I know Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Those are blue collar towns, just hardworking people. But when I went to Cincinnati, they hadn't probably been to the playoffs since maybe 90. So it's 10, 11 years they hadn't went, but they were just true diehard fans that still loved the Bengals and still had that expectation of, opening day, this and that. And even, I think we went 6-10 my first year, but they they supported the team, and they love their Bengals. So when you find somebody that's true and have that type of love for the game and for organization or whatever, you can't help but appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. And going back to Miami, you received the ultimate honor there by so it wasn't retiring your number. It was in their Hall of Honor, I believe they call it.
Ring
of Honor. Yeah. Sorry about that. Who calls you to tell you that that's happening?
I remember I went back after I played and retired to sign and retire because I did want to retire as a Dolphin. So they honored that. I was happy about that. And then I want to say it was Nat Moore. I could be wrong, but I want to say it was Nat Moore that I got the call from, and saying, and I went in with Dick Anderson, another guy played back in the '70s on the undefeated team, this and that. And surprisingly to me, the Dolphins have a lot of offensive linemen that's in that Ring of Honor. So for me to be considered up there with some of the guys' names that were there, along with some of the others, that's almost like being in the Hall of Fame for that organization. So I was truly happy to be named one of those guys there. That was definitely an honor.
But you're being a little humble, because a lot of the fan blogs, when I was doing all my prep for this, name you, and I'd agree with this totally, as best tackle in franchise history.
Yeah, they had some good, and I've met some of the guys that played in the '70s, so I just have a huge respect for the people that came before me. And, guys like Larry Little, Kuchenberg,
mm-hmm.
Bob Baumhauer. So, when you meet those guys and you hear the stories, and when, I went through 2 days, but, talking to some of those guys, Manny Fernandez and they went through 3 days, talking to Larry Zonkin. And I'm like, how do you go through 3 days? Because I can imagine how tough it was when we were going through 2 days. And I said, you add another practice. So I was like, my goodness. I said, I thought I had it bad, but then you start listening to somebody else and be like, hey, this and that, and that's how it was. So you actually learning, I get to learn the history of the game, how it was before you, this and that, and then, you get to just sit back and listen and enjoy some of those stories. And so I have a deep appreciation for that. I might be humble or whatever, but, I truly respect those guys because they set the standard before I got there, and I was happy to be honored to say, okay, keep that same, keep the bar raised high and try to keep things going the way they said it. So I appreciate the fans, showing me love, but I'm always give honor and respect to the guys that paved the way for me. So I guess that's why I answer some of the questions the way I answer. But I hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. So actually, when you brought up Bob Kuchenberg and some of the other players, do you sort of? I know you weren't a member of the Dolphins team that went undefeated, but when the last team loses, do you sort of like raise a glass also, just out of respect to some of the people that you got to meet as a Dolphin?
You said when the last team loses?
Yeah, when there's no longer an undefeated team in a season.
Oh yeah. That's something that and I'm happy because I'm part of the Dolphins, so I know how much the guys that went 17-0. I know how hard it is, and I think the biggest scary guy was a couple years ago when the Patriots went, I want to say 19-0, and they lost.
Mm-hmm.
To
the Giants.
Baltimore in the Super Bowl. No, the Giants in the Super Bowl, yeah. So they always toast champagne. Coach Shula was there with them, this and that, and they celebrate. So, that's something that's bragging rights that nobody else has. So they can say at the end of the day, we have an unblemished record. Yeah, you can say you did this and that, but nobody beat us that year. So I'm always hats off to them. So, yeah, I look forward to that.
And you mentioned of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's needless to say something that I pay a lot of attention to just with the website that I run. You've been snubbed, to put it bluntly, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think, does a lot of things correct. They're a lot more transparent than the Hockey Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame in many ways, and the Basketball Hall of Fame. However, what I think they've always sort of gotten wrong is when they put out a preliminary list each year, there's always some great people who sometimes haven't made it. There was a year, I think it was 2015, you weren't even on the preliminary list. And for a 7-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time first-team All-Pro, to me that's heinous. That's almost a criminal act.
Oh no, I mean I get it. Like you said, the last few years I know I've been on the preliminary list, but I make that list, but I don't even think I made the semis or whatever, and that's kind of puzzling. I know it's a lot of guys that are deserving, and you might not make it all the way, but I would figure that it wouldn't take this long to get out of the preliminary. So I don't understand the whole process, but that's about all I can say. So sometimes question in my mind, but I don't let it bother me a bit. Mm-hmm. I just don't know the whole process. But you're right, to come up with like 100 and something players, and then they reduce it down. But yeah. So
for this past year, for example, there was 122. You were on that list, and when they break it down to the semifinals, it's an incredible group of players. And at that point, when it gets down to that separate committee, they're doing the best they can. I truly feel that. But there were some names, even this year. Reuben Brown was not a preliminary finalist.
Yeah, and I remember him. I played against him when he was at Buffalo, Pro Bowl guard, this and that. And I think he played for Chicago after that or something. So yeah, I know Reuben real well. So yeah, I think the thing is that just like you're surprised, there are players that not necessarily that's up for it that hold you in high regard and say, well, man, I'm surprised you hadn't been put in there yet, or they see you get snubbed and this and that. So it's not just, I think, fans or like people bringing attention to it. It's just, I think if we understood the complete total process, I don't know how you advance or whatever. So I guess that's why I just kind of say, okay, well, maybe next year or something. But you bringing up some good points. I will tell you that.
Well, I'd like to think that every now and then I stumble across a good point once in a while. That's what my wife says. Not very often, though. So, is there somebody who's not in that you would like to see? Like, who would you be most happy personally?
I was happy to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was happy to see Steve Atwater. I ran into him a few years ago and played against him in the Southwest Conference. He was at Arkansas. I was at A&M. And then I remember him playing in Denver all those years, and I always had a tremendous amount of respect. So I was happy to see him actually make the class this year. So I was definitely happy about that.
Thoughts on Zach Thomas? He finally made it to the finalist.
And that's good. He's been on the ballot several times, and I thought he might squeak in there, but he didn't make it. But when you start getting that close, normally, I'm thinking they'll get him in there. But he has the numbers, the stats. I played with him. I was about my maybe 7th year when Zach got there, and he's always, he's got tremendous respect from his teammates, and he's never been one to just say, I did this. He always gives credit to the other guys that played with him on defense, and he's not an I guy. He's definitely a team guy, and I think even the year before, Kevin Maui from the Jets gave him a tremendous amount of credit, this and that, and made that statement. And he's highly respected around the league as well. So, great player.
Yeah, and one of the players that you mentioned earlier, who's sadly no longer with us, Bob Kuchenberg, he was so close. He was a finalist, I believe, 6 times, and then just never made the cut. Did he ever talk about that with you, or it just never came up in conversation?
He didn't, but I think that definitely brought it. If you make the finalist 6 times, it's kind of like, I'm sure it's kind of like Drew Pearson. I think he's one of the last ones on the all-decade team in the 70s, and he's still not in there. And I'm like, you would think this year, with them having a class of like 20 guys going in, that he would get there. And it sounded like before he was almost assured he was going to be in there, because if you watch the interview out after he found out he wasn't in there, I don't know if somebody told him, no, he's pretty much a lock. I don't know, but he was disappointed, but it seemed like he had been betrayed,
yes.
I guess it's puzzling to where he's saying that, you give so much to the game and you want to be given the honor that's due to you, and then, to me it seemed like it was a slap in the face, and I could tell that really, really disturbed him. He's like, never again, y'all won't get me again. I was like, wow, that can be frustrating.
I think it really was too, because I guess like yourself, you that was broadcast on television, or for his reaction, and I was watching the the NFL Network when all of that was going down, and I thought and as much as I'm a fan of so many things with the Hall of Fame, I thought the NFL Network did a horrible job in the way they sort of presented, the way they sort of dragged that whole show on, which was about a 2-hour program. And then as they're announcing people periodically staggered throughout the show, when they announced Harold Carmichael, he was there to receive that. So I could only imagine then afterwards, when you saw the reaction that Drew Pearson had, when Harold Carmichael was there, sort of accepting that announcement, he had to know it was not looking too good, and clearly he had to have felt blindsided because he wasn't invited to that studio.
Right. Yeah, I agree, and it's just and then you see it almost seems like you're saying, well, how did he know and I didn't? That can easily enter in. So I was like,
because I believe it's just like you said, he was it was alluded to him that he was probably going to get in. And there is a lot of valid criticism to, I think, the way the Pro Football Hall of Fame has handled the inductions for the Centennial Slate class, especially with the 2 coaches who got in, because there was a feeling that Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson, both Hall of Fame worthy coaches, I feel, but as if they jumped the line over Don Coryell and definitely Tom Flores, who was a finalist last year. And it made great television when David Baker's knocking on that door. But when people are criticizing that they jumped the line because it made for great television, I don't know how I can disagree with that. I don't know if you sort of feel the same.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising because, it was a surprise to the coaches, like you said, Cowher and Jimmy, but I think in a way, normally the way they do it, and maybe because they're announcers on TV, but normally the way they've been doing it, you're normally in a hotel room or whatever, and you wait for that call or that knock on the door. And so if they were being considered and they were finalists, seemed like that should have been done, but it was like they were already giving the award ahead of everybody else. You know what I'm saying? It's like 2 or 3 days ahead of. Yeah, so it's kind of like,
Well, and Cowher and Johnson, and Cowher and Johnson certainly looked legitimately surprised, and I think Cowboy fans had tears in their eyes looking at Johnson's reaction, and with Troy Aikman looking on, as one of the broadcasters, and it made for great TV. But as soon as that sort of happened, I'm looking through Twitter, and then you seeing the Raiders fans upset, and I get it. I totally get it. Tom Flores, I don't know how he goes from being a finalist to not making that group. But again, it was a different committee than the committees that they had before.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I talked to a reporter one time. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and he said it's not that people don't agree with the people that don't make the Hall of Fame. It's the ones that kind of get snubbed, or the ones that should be in there that don't get the recognition. That stands out more than if you actually get inducted in there. You know what I'm saying? Because it's always,
I do.
You know, somebody you can make a case for, and I think that. And I say, you know what, you got a point. I had Leslie. You know what, you brought up a valid point. I said it's always, but I think it's because people love the game of football, and you can appreciate the body of work that somebody has put together, and you feel they're deserving and they should be in there. They should be honored. So I don't know how they fix it, which I think they are kind of looking at it and saying, okay, maybe doing 5 guys or 6 guys is not enough to get guys in there. Because again, when they did this 20 guys this year, it was some guys that went in that already have passed away. And if possible, you want that person that actually did the body work, if possible, to be able to get honored, you know, have a few words and say that. And, you know, I guess you just try to right wrongs or fix it, or try to come up with a better system. And I think that's what the Hall of Fame is trying to do. And but I guess they keep tweaking until they figure it out and, you know, do what's best. But no, I get all that.
I totally agree with what was said about sometimes actually being snubbed makes you more famous. One of the first people I ever had the privilege of interviewing was Pete Rose, who said the exact same thing to me, and he said that in other interviews since then, as I found before. If he was already in the Hall of Fame, and if he wasn't banned from baseball, he wouldn't be as big a name as he is now.
I agree. Yeah. And I mean, I understand. You know, he made a mistake, did do some things that he probably shouldn't have done. But man, that guy there he should be in there. You know, that's just my opinion. I think he's paid a big enough penalty now to where it's okay, guys. Yeah, he pissed some people off. He did the wrong things, but I think he should be in Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean,
I agree.
I mean, he's huge, yeah.
And yeah, it's sort of like in a similar, not quite a similar situation, because I always wondered if Alex Karras had to wait so many years, and sadly his induction is posthumous because of the gambling when he was suspended a year for gambling. And he was certainly Hall of Fame worthy as a player. No one can doubt that.
No one can doubt it. And then, you know, what you gotta look at is, you know, drugs is an addiction. Alcohol can be an addiction. Women can be an addiction, but gambling is an addiction also. So if you can get that person help and get them to recover from that, I'm not saying what they did was right, but after so long, that's what I said about Pete Rose. I'm not saying what he did was right. I don't know if he even had a gambling addiction. I know some people do. But, I mean, for you to do something like that, it's either a bad decision or, you know, you have some type of addiction or something. And I don't know enough about it, but I do know that's why he's not in there. But I think it's been long enough to where you say, okay, we should let the guy in.
Well, baseball is a far more stubborn sport. Shoeless Joe still banned from the game, even though he's been dead for 50 years.
Wow.
But I guess that's decided on by people who can afford a better suit than I can.
Gotcha.
So I just want to thank you so much for being a part of this.
Okay.
Hopefully we could do this again at another time. And thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Hey, you have a good day, and we can do it again. Ain't no problem. I appreciate everything.
All right. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to our interview with Richmond Webb. When you get a chance, take a look at his page at notinhalloffame.com. Cast your vote. Should he be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? We think he should. You might think the same, and if you do, cast that vote. Give us your opinion. We'd love to hear it. And take a look at all the other names that we have on that. We've recently just updated that, our 300 actually. So it's just been redone to reflect all those who are now eligible for the 2021 Hall of Fame class. Thank you so much, and look for more interviews in the future.